My wife cheated on me with her golf coach and thought she would walk away clean, with the house, the money, even our son. But let's start from the beginning. You ever have a morning where the sun is out, the coffee tastes decent, the world almost tricks you into thinking it's going to be a good day? That was me, just last month, rolling down the back roads of Olathe, Kansas, windows cracked, radio playing some old Springsteen tune. I even caught myself smiling a little. Thought maybe, just maybe, life was finally leveling out after the rough patch. I should have known better. I pulled into the driveway of our little two-story on Willowbrook Lane, the house I'd busted my back for. The house Emily had picked out with a sparkle in her eyes, swearing it was where we'd raise our boys, retire, grow old together. I still had the voicemail she left me after the closing, crying happy tears about how it was our dream house. Funny how dreams turn on you. She wasn't home. Nothing unusual there. Ever since she took up golf, Emily was always out at that country club she used to make fun of. I remember when she called golfers overpaid sunburns with too much free time. Now she was the one coming home with a tan line and a duffel bag that always smelled like cheap cologne I didn't wear. I didn't want to believe it. God help me, I didn't. You spend 20 years with someone, build a whole damn life together. You don't wake up one morning thinking you're sleeping next to a stranger. But denial's a funny thing. It'll let you repaint every red flag into a shade of maybe I'm just overthinking. That afternoon, my neighbor Ron, bless him, came by while I was checking the mailbox. Said he hated to be the one, but he thought I ought to know. Said he'd seen Emily, more than once, over at the driving range, but not alone. Always with Coach Dan. Coach Dan. The guy with the sun-bleached hair, the megawatt smile, the arms like he'd bench-pressed pickup trucks for fun. The guy Emily joked was way too flirty when she signed up for lessons. Yeah, him. I played it cool for Ron's sake. Nodded, thanked him, promised I'd look into it. Then I went inside, sat on the edge of the couch, and just stared at the TV without turning it on. You ever feel like the air in your house changes? Like all the memories, all the family photos, all the Sunday morning pancakes and Christmas mornings, they all suddenly feel like props in a show you weren't even starring in anymore? That's what it felt like. And that's when it hit me, cold and clear. I wasn't just going to sit back and watch her walk away with everything we built. Not without a fight. Not this time. After Ron left, I sat there with my hands folded tight enough to turn my knuckles white. I could have ignored it. I could have told myself Ron was wrong, that maybe she was just getting better at her short game. But deep down, some part of me, the part that had been whispering for months, already knew. Denial wasn't going to save me anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to the one place I never thought I'd need. Melvin's. Private investigator. 2 doors down from the Olathe DMV, sandwiched between a vape shop and a payday loan place. Not exactly glamorous, but Melvin came recommended by a buddy from high school who found out his wife was cheating before she finished packing her gym bag. The office smelled like burnt coffee and tired desperation. Melvin was a thick-set man with a mustache that looked like it had seen better decades. He didn't bother pretending to be sympathetic. He just nodded when I told him the basics and slid a contract across the desk. I'll get you what you need, he said, scribbling a few notes. Photos, times, places. You want audio? That's extra. I signed without hesitation. If I was going to confront her, I needed more than gut feelings and neighborly gossip. I needed proof she couldn't spin into something else. I needed leverage. I barely slept that week. Every ping from my phone made my heart leap and my stomach drop. Every day, every hour that passed without word from Melvin made me question whether I was losing my mind. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe Ron saw something innocent. But when the pictures came in, there was no room left for doubt. It was worse than I expected. There they were, all cozy in the back corner of the driving range, where the cameras barely caught them. Her laughing at something he whispered in her ear. His hand low on her back, too familiar. Her leaning into him like she used to lean into me when we first started dating, back when just brushing my arm against hers could send a charge through my whole damn body. The final shot was the real kicker, them pulling out of the country club parking lot together, her SUV following his truck, not back to our home, but out to that motel on the edge of town, the one where the no vacancies sign was always half-lit and flickering. I closed the folder, hand shaking, heart hollow. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the planning. The ease. The way she built a second life right under my nose like it was the most natural thing in the world. That was the night the switch flipped inside me. The man who would have forgiven anything if she'd just come home and cried and said she was sorry, that man died sitting at the kitchen table, staring at cheap, glossy photographs taken with a shaky hand. The man who got up and poured himself a drink without tasting it. He was someone else entirely. And he was ready to burn it all down if he had to. You ever hear people say revenge isn't worth it? That it eats you alive, makes you bitter? Those people must have never had their whole life stolen by someone smiling while they did it. That night, sitting in that empty house in Olathe, I realized something simple and cold. Emily didn't just betray me. She thought she could win. She thought I'd roll over, sign the papers, let her walk away with the house, the savings, the retirement I bled for. She didn't know me as well as she thought. I poured another drink, not because I needed it, but because it gave my hands something to do, and pulled out the battered yellow legal pad I kept in the junk drawer. The same pad I'd once used to sketch out plans for remodeling the kitchen she said she loved so much. Now it was going to help me dismantle the life she tried to hijack. At the top, I wrote 2 words in block letters: take everything. First thing, the house. It was in my name only. I made sure of that years ago after refinancing. Emily never noticed. She signed what I put in front of her, trusting the man who fixed every flat tire, every leaky faucet, every broken thing in her life. Second, the bank accounts. I had separate accounts she didn't know about, money I'd squirreled away over years, just small amounts here and there. Birthday checks from my folks. A little extra from freelance gigs. Nothing illegal, just private. I'd always told myself it was a rainy day fund. Turns out it was a hurricane fund. Third, evidence. Melvin's folder was just the beginning. I needed more. Emails. Texts. A paper trail so thick no lawyer could spin it into a he said she said. Lucky for me, Emily wasn't exactly discreet. I already knew her passwords. I was the one who set them up. And fourth, reputation. Emily cared about appearances more than anything. Country club memberships. Bragging rights at brunch. Her image was spotless, the perfect suburban wife. She'd spent years curating it, polishing it like the silverware she only took out on Thanksgiving. She never thought the man fixing her sink could be the same man who would tear all that down. It wasn't about rage. It wasn't about screaming matches or tossing her clothes onto the lawn like some cheap drama. It was about making sure, when the dust settled, she had nothing left to polish but regrets. I set the pen down, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I didn't feel helpless. I didn't feel crazy. I didn't feel like the idiot husband everyone would pity. I felt ready. Tomorrow, the war would begin. First thing the next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer my buddy Travis had recommended. Guy named Russell Kane. Office in downtown Olathe, tucked between an insurance agency and a nail salon. Not flashy. No marble floors or big mahogany desks. Just a man in a wrinkled gray suit with the kind of sharp, assessing eyes that told me he was exactly what I needed. Someone who didn't care about feelings, only facts. When I handed over Melvin's folder, Russell barely raised an eyebrow. He flipped through the photos, the times, the dates, nodding like a man mentally checking off a grocery list. You're ahead of the curve, he said, finally looking up. Most guys show up here with nothing but a sob story and a prayer. You've got proof? I nodded once, jaw tight. What do you want out of this? He asked. Everything, I wanted to say. Everything she thought she was going to get. Instead, I said, I want the house. I want the accounts. I want her reputation in ashes if she tries to come after me for anything. Russell didn't flinch. He just sat back in his chair, tapping a pen against the file. You're in a good position, he said slowly. House is in your name. No joint mortgage. She's committing adultery. We can use that. Kansas is technically a no-fault state for divorce, but judges are human. They notice who comes to court with clean hands and who doesn't. He laid out the plan like a general sketching battle lines. We'd file first. Beat her to the punch. We'd serve her publicly at her precious golf club, preferably, where everyone could see. We'd freeze the joint accounts legally before she could drain them dry. We'd subpoena her phone records, her emails. And if she pushed for alimony or tried to claim half the house, we'd drop Melvin's photos in front of the judge so fast her head would spin. You ready for the fallout? Russell asked, serious now. I thought about Noah. About the quiet little dinners we used to have, him talking about school while Emily scrolled through her phone under the table. About the nights I went to bed alone because she had early lessons. I thought about how easily she'd replaced me. I'm ready, I said. Russell smiled a little, not a kind smile, but the kind that says, let's get to work. By the time I walked out of that office, the first salvo had been launched. The paperwork was filed. The process server had his instructions. The clock was ticking, and Emily had no idea that her whole carefully curated life was about to explode in her hands. As I got into my truck and turned the key, I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, really looked. For the first time in a long time, I recognized the man staring back. Not the worn-down husband trying to hold together a marriage that only existed in his own head. No, this was someone new. Someone dangerous. If you had told me a month ago that I'd feel satisfaction watching my wife get served divorce papers at her precious country club, I'd have said you were crazy. But let me tell you, when I pulled into the parking lot of Willow Creek Country Club that Friday afternoon, parked 2 rows over where I had a clean view of the front entrance, it felt necessary. Like the closing of a door that should have been slammed shut years ago. Russell had set it up perfectly. The process server, a wiry guy named Chris who looked more like a substitute gym teacher than a hired hand, stood casually by the entrance with a clipboard tucked under his arm. He looked like he was delivering dry cleaning, not detonating a marriage. I spotted Emily right away. Bright blue polo shirt, those white capris she always said made her feel sporty, and that same easy laugh she used to give me before it became reserved for everyone else. She was walking with Coach Dan, of course, both of them carrying golf bags, looking every bit the golden couple. My heart didn't even speed up. Not anymore. Chris approached them like he was just asking for directions. I could almost hear him from where I sat when he handed her the envelope. "Are you Emily Harper?" She said yes, distracted, smiling even. "You've been served." Her whole face changed in an instant. Smile gone. Eyes wide. Body stiff like she'd been sucker punched. Dan looked confused, taking a step back like maybe whatever disease she'd just caught might be contagious. Emily clutched the envelope like it was ticking in her hands, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. Around them, people started noticing. Heads turned. Whispers rose. Emily, queen of the greens, beloved socialite, perfect wife, standing there humiliated in broad daylight. I sat in my truck, watched the scene unfold through the windshield, and felt nothing. No pity. No guilt. Just a quiet, cold satisfaction that justice, real justice, was finally starting to be served. She didn't chase after the process server. She didn't scream or cry. She stood there, frozen, clutching the papers, while Dan awkwardly muttered something and practically sprinted back inside the club without her. Yeah, real keeper, that one. I waited until she gathered herself, shoved the papers into her bag, and stormed to her car. Only then did I start my truck and drive off, blending into the late afternoon traffic like just another man heading home after a long day's work. Except now, home wasn't a place she was welcome anymore. That night, the text started. First one was short. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Then another. "We can fix this. You don't have to do this." Then the real Emily showed up. "You'll regret this. I'll ruin you." I didn't reply to any of them. Just turned my phone face down, sat back in the recliner I'd once built from scratch during better years, and closed my eyes. Let her rage. Let her panic. I was done reacting. From now on, Emily was the one who'd have to dance. And I was the one calling the tune. Saturday morning rolled in slow and heavy, the kind of overcast day where the air feels too thick even to breathe. I woke up to 5 missed calls from Emily and 3 new voicemails I didn't bother listening to. I already knew the tune. Same song, different verses, confusion, anger, bargaining, threats. Classic Emily. I spent the morning mowing the lawn, fixing the gate latch she'd been nagging me about for months, little tasks that kept my hands busy while my mind stayed sharp. It felt good. Every pass of the mower, every turn of the screwdriver, it felt like reclaiming something. Around noon, Russell called. She hired a lawyer, he said. One of the big talkers from downtown Kansas City. Real scorched earth type. I felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth. Good. Let her throw money into a fire trying to win a battle she already lost. Russell continued. They're filing a countersuit. She's claiming emotional abandonment. Wants half of everything. Alimony too. I leaned on the fence post, watching the clouds drift over the horizon. Of course she was. The woman who betrayed me was now painting me as the villain. Let her file, I said calmly. Already filed ours first, Russell reminded me. Which gives us the upper hand. And the evidence, well, that's our nuclear button. That afternoon, Emily showed up. No call. No warning. Just a screech of tires and a slamming car door. I was sitting on the porch, sipping coffee, when she stormed up the walkway in jeans and a leather jacket that looked more midlife crisis than wronged wife. You think you're gonna win? She snapped, waving a manila folder in her hand like it was a sword. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. You're trespassing, I said, voice even. Stop being so dramatic, she hissed. She threw the folder at my feet. It spilled open, papers fluttering across the porch, screenshots of our bank statements, mortgage documents, my old text messages where I'd apologized for working late or missing date nights. Proof, she thought. Proof that I was the absent husband, the bad guy. I leaned down, picked up one paper at random. It was a text from 2 years ago, me telling her I was stuck at the office because the quarterlies were due. That was her smoking gun? You realize, I said slowly, standing up and meeting her eyes, that none of this changes the fact that you were sleeping with Coach Dan. She paled, just for a second. The facade cracked. And you realize, I continued, voice dropping, that I've got photos, dates, witnesses. Hell, even your text messages. You weren't just unfaithful. You were careless. Emily opened her mouth, but I cut her off. You came here today hoping to scare me. But the truth is, you're already beat. You just don't know it yet. For the first time in a long time, she looked scared. Really scared. She gathered the papers with shaking hands, stuffing them back into the folder without meeting my eyes. This isn't over, she muttered. I watched her walk back to her car, watched her slam the door and peel out of the driveway like some teenager after a bad breakup. I stood there until the dust settled, sipping my coffee. She was right about one thing. It wasn't over. But for the first time, the end was finally on my terms. You ever think you've hit rock bottom, only to realize there's a whole basement underneath? That was me 2 days after Emily's little driveway tantrum. Russell called again, voice a little tighter this time. Thought you should hear this from me first. Apparently, when they started combing through the financial records, the real digging, not just the surface stuff you pull for taxes, something else popped up. Something bigger than a few hidden credit card charges or suspicious hotel bills. There was another account. Not ours. Not even at the same bank. An account Emily had opened 3 years ago under her maiden name. A place where small withdrawals from our joint checking had been funneling for years. $10 here, $100 there. Just enough that I didn't notice with the bills and the mortgage and the daily grind blurring everything together. At first, I thought, all right, maybe she was just squirreling away a little rainy day money. Pride hurt, sure, but survivable. But Russell kept talking. Turns out, that small savings account wasn't small anymore. She drained over $72,000 into it since 2021. 72 grand. While I was patching leaky pipes, skipping vacations, fixing her damn car every 6 months because she loved it too much to trade in, she was bleeding us dry $100 at a time. All while smiling at me across the dinner table. My hand shook a little when I hung up the phone. Not with rage, exactly. Something colder. Betrayal doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes it's ice. A slow, creeping freeze that locks you in place while your whole world cracks around you. I pulled out the box from the top of the closet, the one with our wedding album, a couple of anniversary cards, a necklace I'd saved up 3 months to buy her when she got promoted. I flipped through it, page after page, all those perfect smiling photos. All those memories that were supposed to mean something. It hit me then, none of it was real. At least, not to her. I wasn't her partner. I was her plan B. A stable man she could build a life with until something flashier, somewhat flashier, came along. I closed the box. Set it by the door. I wasn't keeping the lies anymore. That night, I called Russell and told him to go for the jugular. No settlement. No mediation. We take this to court. We drag every dirty little secret into the light. We make sure that when she walks out of that courthouse, all she's got left is her car payment, her tanning membership, and the wreckage she built herself. She didn't just want to leave me. She wanted to profit from it. Not anymore. Court wasn't like TV. No shouting matches. No dramatic gasps from the crowd. It was quieter. Meaner. More real. 2 weeks after we filed, the first hearing was scheduled at the Johnson County Courthouse. I showed up early. Sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, just breathing. Not because I was scared. Not anymore. But because I knew today wasn't just about dividing property. It was about ripping off the mask Emily wore for the world, the one she clung to so tightly even when her life was falling apart behind the scenes. When I walked into the courthouse, Russell was already there, tapping away on his phone like he was ordering groceries instead of preparing for battle. He barely glanced up when he handed me the final file, the full list of what we were hitting her with. Adultery, asset concealment, financial fraud, all tied up in a bow. Emily showed up 10 minutes late, hair thrown into a messy bun, makeup half done like she didn't have time to finish pretending everything was fine. Coach Dan wasn't with her. Figures. Her new lawyer, a woman who looked like she ate nails for breakfast, tried to put on a brave face. But even she flinched when Russell dropped our evidence packet on the judge's bench like it weighed 100 pounds. The judge, a gray-haired man with a voice like gravel, flipped through the first few pages, eyebrows slowly climbing higher. He didn't say anything right away. Didn't have to. You could feel the shift in the room. Like somebody turned the thermostat to 0. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she stumbled over her words. Started crying, real tears, maybe, but by then I didn't care enough to tell the difference. She tried to talk about how lonely she'd been, how hard it was being married to someone who worked all the time, how she made mistakes but shouldn't be punished for them. I watched it all like a man watching a building he once lived in burn to the ground. Sad, maybe, in the abstract, but mostly relieved he got out when he did. The judge didn't yell, didn't lecture. He just asked one question. Mrs. Harper, can you explain these transactions? And he pointed straight at the spreadsheet Russell had built, line by line, withdrawal by withdrawal, showing exactly how she bled me dry over 3 years. Emily's face crumpled. Her lawyer started whispering frantically in her ear. The judge set the next hearing date and dismissed us with a few clipped words. When I stepped out into the bright sunlight, I felt lighter. Not happy. Not yet. But freer. Behind me, I heard Emily arguing with her lawyer, voice shrill, desperate. I didn't turn around. Not my problem anymore. Let her lie in the ruins she built. You'd think winning feels like a parade. Like marching bands, fireworks, people lifting you on their shoulders, chanting your name. It doesn't. Winning feels like silence. Like stepping into a room that used to suffocate you and realizing you can finally breathe. After that first hearing, things moved fast. Russell filed for a financial restraining order, froze every account Emily had access to, including the secret stash she thought was safe. The house stayed mine. The judge ruled she couldn't move back in while the case was pending, and when Emily's lawyer tried to argue for temporary spousal support, Russell didn't even let her finish before dropping another photo onto the judge's desk. This time of Emily and Dan coming out of that dingy motel looking like they'd been hit by a bus. Motion denied. Emily started blowing up my phone again. Texts that swung like a wrecking ball from sweet to vicious. We can work this out. You'll never find someone better than me. I'll ruin you if it's the last thing I do. I didn't answer a single one. No more giving her a stage. No more giving her my attention, my energy, my anything. One night, a few weeks later, I stood in what used to be our living room. The couch was gone. She took it during the initial split, and the walls looked a little emptier without her decorations, her little farmhouse chic nonsense that I always hated but never said out loud. The house felt bigger now, quieter. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, sat in the middle of the floor, and just looked around. No TV on. No phone in my hand. Just me, the soft hum of the air conditioner, and the quiet understanding that for the first time in a long time, there was nothing false here. No pretending. No wondering when the next blow would come. It wasn't the kind of victory you could post about or brag over beers about. It was private. Personal. It was peace. Later that night, I found Noah's old soccer ball under the stairs. He hadn't lived with me full-time yet, custody stuff was still coming, but he visited on weekends, and every time he left, the house felt a little more like home again. I sat there with that soccer ball in my lap, thinking about all the plans Emily and I had made in this house. The life we were supposed to build. And I realized something that hit deeper than any of the betrayal had. She hadn't just cheated on me. She cheated on us. On the future. On the family we were supposed to be. And that was her loss. Not mine. The weekend after the court hearing, Noah was supposed to spend Saturday and Sunday with Emily. I didn't fight it. Custody hadn't been sorted yet. And even though everything in me wanted to protect him from the mess she'd made, I figured he deserved the chance to see it for himself. Kids know. They always know, even if you try to hide it. But Saturday afternoon, while I was scraping old paint off the back porch railing, my phone buzzed. It was Noah. Can you come get me? No other words. No smiley face. No jokes like he used to text when he wanted a ride home early from a sleepover. Just that flat, serious sentence. I threw on a clean shirt, grabbed the keys, and drove across town faster than I probably should have. Her new apartment complex was a bland gray rectangle on the edge of Olathe, the kind of place built cheap and fast for people in a hurry to start over without thinking it through. When I pulled up, Noah was already standing outside. Backpack on. Shoulders stiff. Face tight in that way you only get when you're trying not to cry and failing. I didn't even park properly. Just threw it in neutral and jumped out. He climbed into the truck without a word. Buckled his seatbelt like it was muscle memory. I waited until we were a few blocks away before I asked, real quiet, "You okay, buddy?" He didn't answer right away. Then, finally, in a voice so small it nearly broke me, he said, "I don't want to live with her." I had to grip the steering wheel harder just to keep from pulling over and losing it right there. I wanted to ask what happened. I wanted to know every ugly detail. But I didn't push. Instead, I just said, "You don't have to." He nodded, staring out the window like the words hadn't quite reached him yet. We got home. I made grilled cheese the way he liked, extra buttery, cut into triangles, not squares. We sat on the couch and watched old reruns of Mythbusters like we used to when he was little, before Emily decided we were too boring, too ordinary. Halfway through an episode about exploding water heaters, Noah turned to me and said, "She said it's better if I stay with you. That I'm too much like you anyway." I didn't have an answer for that. Because what do you say to your 12-year-old son when his own mother makes him feel like secondhand baggage? I just reached out, pulled him into a hug he didn't fight, and said the only thing that mattered. "You're exactly enough, kiddo." Exactly. We didn't talk much more that night. But when I checked on him before bed, he was curled up under the old Seahawks blanket we used to take to tailgates, sound asleep for the first time in weeks. That was the moment I realized. Winning wasn't about court rulings or property lines or frozen bank accounts. It was about that kid sleeping peacefully upstairs. It was about choosing to be the man he could count on, even when everything else around him fell apart. Final hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. Early April, rainy and cold, like the sky was still deciding if winter was really over. I wore the same suit I got married in, not because I was trying to be poetic, but because it still fit, and it felt right to close this chapter in the same fabric I'd started it with. Noah had stayed with me the whole week leading up to it. Didn't ask about his mom. Didn't seem to want to. That silence said more than anything he could have spoken. When I got to the courthouse, Russell was already waiting. Calm. Buttoned up. Carrying our entire case in a manila folder like it weighed nothing at all. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded once. That was all I needed to do. Emily showed up late again. Her lawyer looked tired, like she'd been dragging her client uphill the entire way. Emily looked different, too. Worn. Fragile. The edge was gone from her, replaced with something I almost didn't recognize. Fear. It wasn't the fear of losing money or status. It was the fear of losing control, of realizing the world she'd carefully arranged, the lies, the secrets, the distractions, had crumbled around her feet, and now she had to stand in the rubble. Before the judge entered, Emily's lawyer approached Russell with a last-minute offer. She wanted to settle. No alimony. No cut of the house. Just a quiet ending, sealed records, and an agreement that I wouldn't pursue further charges over the financial fraud. Russell turned to me. I thought about it. About the chance to drag this out, really make her squirm. Make her pay in court fees and public embarrassment. But then I remembered Noah, asleep under that Seahawks blanket, just wanting peace. I nodded. "Take it," I said. In the courtroom, it was quick. The judge skimmed the paperwork, confirmed the terms, and made it official. Divorced. Just like that. When it was over, I stood up, ready to walk out and never look back. But Emily approached me, slow and unsure, like a ghost still tethered to the life she tried to destroy. She didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me, eyes red, hands trembling slightly at her sides. "I never thought you'd go through with it," she whispered. I didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. Not to her. She looked like she wanted to keep going, to ask for forgiveness, or maybe to justify everything one more time, but I just walked past her. Out the courtroom. Into the gray morning. Into something that felt a whole lot like freedom. I didn't look back. Not once. You don't notice how loud a house is until it goes quiet for the right reasons. No more slammed doors. No more passive-aggressive sighs from the other room. No more walking on eggshells around a person who made you feel like you were always one step away from being the problem. Just quiet. And peace. After the final hearing, I didn't celebrate. There wasn't some big moment with balloons and champagne. I went home, picked up takeout from a little barbecue joint off 135th Street, and watched The Sandlot with Noah. He laughed at all the right parts. Quoted the lines he used to mumble when he was 5. "You're killing me, Smalls." He looked more at home than I'd seen him in months. That weekend, we fixed up the old shed in the backyard, turned it into a little workshop, hung up a pegboard, organized tools, built a birdhouse that leaned too far to the left but stood tall anyway. I let him use the power drill. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. I realized then, this was the life I wanted. Not the picture-perfect marriage. Not the fake smiles for social media. But the messy, honest, quiet kind of life where you could breathe. Emily tried to call once more. No voicemail. Just her name flashing across the screen. I let it ring. There was a time when I would have answered out of habit. Out of hope. Out of that stupid ache in your gut that makes you think maybe this time they'll say what you need to hear. But that time was over. I wasn't angry anymore. And that surprised me. Because for so long, anger was what got me through the day, the fuel I poured into the tank just to keep moving. But now, I didn't need it. What I needed was right in front of me. A kid who chose me, a future that wasn't written by someone else, and the space to finally become a man who didn't have to beg to be seen. I don't know if Emily will ever understand what she really lost. But I do. And I won't ever let myself forget it. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Because when you walk through fire and come out clean on the other side, you don't go back to collecting matches. You build something new. And you build it better.